Hey, welcome to Vortex Garage, and on today's video we're going to be tackling a viewer request, which is great because it's something that we need to do on our WJ Grand Cherokee. Now, if you watched our Jeep Grand Cherokee WJ drive shaft special, you know that when we went to pull the rear drive shaft on our 2004 4.7 liter V8 Grand Cherokee, we noticed we had some leaking around the rear output seal of the transfer case. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So we've got our output seal and we're going to show you how to put that in on the NV247. Now, before we start, 2 points that are very important. Number one, you need to know what transfer case you have. So if you're not sure, crawl underneath, take a look at the tag and get the number off of it, because the part number of the seal is going to be different based on what you got. Of course, a lot of the 4 liters have the NV242, and a lot of the 4.7 liters have the NV247. But we know that Jeep had a lot of different variants. There were some 242 HDs on some of the 4.7 liter versions, and I don't know if any of the 4 liters had like quadra-drive setups and maybe had the 247, so you need to double check because there's always little intricacies and changes here and there in the model years. So that's step number one, find out exactly what transfer case you have. Second thing, make sure you know what output seal you need because they're different. There's multiple outputs on a transfer case. You have your rear output that goes to the back. Of course, your front output goes to the front axle. Those are different part numbers for the seals as well. So we're going to be looking at the rear transfer case seal, output seal on the NV247, and that's this right here. Let's grab this camera. We'll show you the part number and show you the seal up close. All right, so our part number, this is a Mopar part, CH489729-8AA, and this is the seal. All right. So we're going to be working on putting that in today, and before we start, really quick, hey, we're going to cut into our video real quick here, because although we finished our output seal job on this Jeep, and we're going to continue this video to show you how to do it, it's entirely possible that you don't even need to replace your output seal. In fact, our output seal probably wasn't really leaking in the first place on our Jeep either. See, I did a little bit of research after doing the job and found that there's 2 simple things that you can check before tackling this job to see if that's your problem. We're going to take a look at those really quick. Now, first off, on the top of the output tail shaft of the NV247, you'll find this rubber plug, this kind of rectangular sort of oval rubber plug. Now, these are known for leaking, and these actually, as they leak, will kind of cause the fluid to come over the sides and back of the transfer case and look exactly like a rear output seal leak. These are only a couple bucks to get, and we picked one up and we're going to go ahead and replace it. So I think that this was probably the case in ours, but then again, it's not so bad that we did put a new seal in, especially with 165,000 miles. Now, there's one more thing that you can check, and that is your vent tube. Make sure that your vent tube hasn't come loose or dry rotted and broken off, because that can cause fluid to kind of come out and spray over the back of the transfer case as you're driving. So that's entirely plausible that that's the case too. But more often than not, this rubber plug on the top of the tail shaft housing of the transfer case is what your problem is. Now again, we actually picked up a new one by buying a whole seal kit for under $10 for the NV247, so that made it nice and easy. I suppose you could take this old one and clean it up and put a little bit of RTV around it and put it in a pinch, and that would probably work just fine. But then, of course, it might make removal a little harder later on. And like I said, you can pick these up pretty inexpensively. So hopefully that helps you. We're going to get back to our video on the output seal, but make sure you get out and check these things before you go and tackle the output seal job, because you very well may not have to do it. So really quick, let's talk about methods for removing the old seal. Now, you might think, oh, I can just come in with a couple of screwdrivers and a hammer and I'm just going to kind of hack around this thing and pry it out and I'll get the old one out. Well, that's a risky move because this seal does a couple things. Number one, it seals the output where you have your output shaft and your yoke of your drive shaft interfacing, but it also seals on the outside where it mates with the outer edge of that machined area of the transfer case. So if you kind of go in here and start prying around the edge with screwdrivers, you risk kind of gouging and marring that surface, and then that nice, perfectly smooth machined surface now has ridges and gouges and bumps in it. When you go to put the new one in, it's not going to want to seal correctly, and you risk causing leaking around the outer edge. So you could use a seal puller. This is an adjustable seal puller from Lyle. This is Lyle part number 56650. And this is a handy thing for when you got to pull seals. You want to pull a crank seal, rear main seal, anything, depending on the type of seal. Seals like this. Basically what this tool does, it has these sharp edges on either side. There's kind of a larger one and a smaller one based on what you need. The piece is actually adjustable too, so you can kind of get the angle that you need depending on where you're working. Let's try to put this back in. Of course, I'm on camera, it's going to take me longer. All right, so what you would do with this is you'd kind of come up to your seal and you'd smack this down into it and kind of cut into it, and then you'd sort of rock it back and pry it out. Okay, so nice little tool for that. And you might have to go around the seal a couple times because, you know, when you're pulling one of these out, just like when you're putting it in, you don't want it to go sideways because that'll cause it to bind up. So you want to pull it as straight out as possible. All right, so you got your seal puller, but let's say you don't have a seal puller and you still want to do this. Well, there's another trick, and that involves using a couple of wood screws. So what you do with the wood screws is you actually find, as long as the seal has a nice area you can do it, you go ahead and screw these in at 180 degrees apart, use a pair of pliers, and then alternating sides, you kind of wiggle it out. Now, that can be a pain, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on how tight the seal is and how stuck in there it is from years of use and heat cycles and whatnot. But generally speaking, you can get away with doing it with these, and that's what we're going to try. We're going to show you how this works. So, that said, let's crawl underneath. First step, we're going to need to remove our drive shaft, then we can go ahead and get the seal pulled out. So we'll meet you under the Jeep. All right, so we're under our Jeep. We got it supported by jack stands, and we're looking at our transfer case. And you can see the oil that we've had seeping on it. It's actually gotten worse since last time we looked at it. And you can see up there, there's our output seal. That's what we're going to be pulling out. So we need to get our drive shaft disconnected and slid out. So we'll need to go to the back of the Jeep first and go ahead. As you can see, we've already got a socket on one of them. We're going to need to get the strap bolts released and then pop the U-joint off, and then we'll be able to slide out the drive shaft. And of course, if you need to remember how to remove your drive shaft, you can always look at our drive shaft special where we talk about that. All right, so one nice thing about these when you remove the drive shaft, you actually don't have to worry about any fluid loss from the transfer case. There might be a drip or two of residuals, but the fluid sits lower than the output area that we're working on. All right, and as you can see, we've got our rear drive shaft removed, and it was nice and easy. Once we popped the U-joint loose in the back, we dropped it down and then slid the yoke right out of the back of the transfer case. Nice and easy. All right, we're ready to pull the seal out, and we've got our screws, of course, and we need to get those into the seal so we can go ahead and pull it out. The idea is that we're going to put them in about 180 degrees apart, and that way, as we pull on either side, we're basically pulling the seal out as straight as possible. Now, one thing you're going to find with these seals is they actually, even though they look like they're all rubber, they have a rigid piece, and that's actually a little bit of aluminum, I believe. So we do need to drill some pilot holes. So what I've got here is a small drill bit for a pilot hole, and you can see I put masking tape around it because I don't want to sink my drill bit too far in when I drill in. I've really only got about 1/8 of an inch on this drill bit before I hit the masking tape. You can go about 1/4 of an inch before you run out of seal material in terms of like how the seal's stepped and raised. It's very thin to drill through, but there's a stepping piece. So I know I've got, from looking at the new one, 1/4 inch of space behind it. So I've got my masking tape as far up as I can go, about 1/8 of an inch. It's plenty to drill through to get my screw in, but also not so far that I'm going to risk going too deep or pushing the masking tape up. So make sure you put the tape on nice and tight. I'll put a bunch of layers on, that way it'll stop really good. Now the nice thing, the seal's kind of got little divots all the way around it, so those can kind of act like guides for my drill. So I'm going to put the drill on one of those and then go ahead, I'll tell you what, I'll do it on one of these so that you can maybe see on the camera. And then I'm just lightly going to start drilling in. All right, and you see I punched through and I immediately stopped. So I didn't push my tape up too much, which is good. So that was just enough to get into the seal and have a pilot hole for my screw. Just double check your work. You don't want to come off it and hit anything on the case. All right, dug into that one. So of course we're going to have to clean up after we pull it out because there are going to be a little bit of metal shavings. And you can see I did push my tape just a tiny bit, which is the nature of this. Even though you put them on really tight, these little tape stops are pretty easy to move. That's why I put it about 1/8 of an inch in. That way I knew I'd have plenty of kind of safety buffer and not risk going too deep. So good, I feel pretty decent about that. So now we can take our screws, go to our pilot holes and get them started. Okay, and then we'll take a screwdriver and drive them in until they're tight. You don't have to go too far. Remember, we don't want to, be marring the surface of the bearings. So we're just trying to get these in so that they feel nice and tight and are on the full part of the thread so they're gripping the seal. Okay. This one's not quite in. Because if you're not that tight on them, what you'll find is as you go to pull it, you'll end up pulling the screw out before you pull the seal out. All right, now we're going to take our pliers, and I've got a little, so I got my regular pliers. I've got a little hammer, ball peen hammer, to help. I'm going to put the pliers right here, and then I can take the ball peen hammer and tap the pliers a little bit lightly. Oops. I pulled that one out, so I got to go in just a little further. So, like I said, I'm erring on the side of caution here because I don't want to go too deep behind the seal. All right, so I reset that one, so it should be in a little better now. It wasn't actually biting through our pilot hole, but I got it too. So now let's try this again with our pliers. All right, we went that side a little bit. Now we're going to switch sides and do this side. And it might take a little bit of effort because this seal's been in there a while. All right, well, I managed to pull this screw out and bend it a little bit too, as you can see. So I ended up drilling the second pilot hole and moved it. So it's not a full 180 degrees, but it is moved a bit. And you can see we are starting to make some headway on getting this pulled out. So let's hope that this one holds as we can go ahead and slide this out. All right, you can see our seal's starting to come now, so that did the trick. So, go back to my smaller hammer. All right, and it's starting to come, but we're going to alternate from side to side so that we can, like I said, get it out nice and straight. All right, so aside from having to relocate one of our screws, the method worked pretty good and we were able to pop the seal out. Now we can go ahead and get the new seal and get that installed.
To reinstall the seal, start by positioning it lightly, keeping it as straight as possible. We ended up using a ball joint press adapter that was the perfect size to drive the seal in. The edge of the adapter rode on the edge of the seal perfectly. In this case, make sure you have something that fits good to drive the seal in straight. A normal flat driver won't work here since the output shaft extends out from the housing. Now we started with a rubber mallet, which works pretty good, especially if you want to take your time. That said, a dead blow hammer is another option. It works a lot faster, so use whichever you feel most comfortable with. The key here is to drive the seal in as straight as possible until flush, checking your progress as needed.
All right, and we're checking it, and our seal is flush all the way around. It's not distorted. It went in perfectly straight. So this tool worked great. The rubber mallet was pretty good for getting it started. The dead blow, though, gave a little bit of extra force to kind of drive it home. So you can kind of pick and choose which one you use. The dead blow obviously is going to go a little faster. So if you really want to be careful and check your progress, you can use the rubber mallet, and it'll be a little easier on the seal. But anyway, we're driven in. We're in straight. It's flush all the way around, so we're ready to go ahead and reinstall our drive shaft. All right, so we got our drive shaft, and I put a little bit of ATF on the yoke. I like to do that so we don't kind of damage the seal as we're slugging things in. So we're going to go ahead and line up our U-joints about where we want to go. Then we'll go ahead and get our yoke installed up here in the transfer case. Carefully slide it in. We don't want to damage anything. Okay, there we go. All right. All right, we'll get that slid in. Okay, and then if you need to twist the drive shaft at all, make sure you got your transfer case in neutral. Of course, we have our Jeep all the way suspended on jack stands. All right, so we got our U-joint seated. Everything looks good up here. It slid in very easily. We can go ahead and put on our caps, our strap bolts, and these are going to torque to 14 foot-pounds per the service manual. So we'll go ahead and hand tighten these first, and then we'll go ahead and get them torqued on. All right, so I hope you enjoyed our video as we removed the rear output seal on our NV247 transfer case and replaced it with a new one. Now, I had never done the screw method before, so that was, for me, it was trying something different. I've always just used my seal puller. And after doing the screw method, I still like my seal puller, and I think I'm going to stick to using that. And I'd say get one of these. They're very handy. I personally think there's a little bit less chance of damaging something with one of these, because when you use the screw method, you're actually drilling into the piece to make the pilot holes because that seal's rigid. And I thought originally it wasn't rigid enough that I could just hammer in the screw a little bit and kind of puncture through and then self-tap, but I did have to drill some pilot holes. So I'd tell you, if you can, get yourself a seal puller. It'll make the job a little easier. But we did show you how you can use that screw method to remove a seal, especially a stubborn seal that you have. That might be an option for giving it a try. But do be careful with that, because if you drill too deep on those pilot holes, you're going to go right into the machine surface of the area that you're looking to replace the seal on. Ours went in with no problem, and it looks like we're in good shape. So again, we'll keep some more videos coming on the WJ. We're also going to update you on some restoration stuff. We've got Mountaineer stuff. We've got tons of stuff coming. So keep checking out our videos here on Vortex Garage.